to History of Heroes, where we detail the storied pasts of your favorite intrepid adventurers from before they joined the table and became part of our evolving world. Today's hero is Natalia Volkov. It is an unfortunate truth that not all children are born into a caring family or a healthy environment. The world is wide and full of terrors, and Natalia knows all too well of those who live in the shadows. The girl was born in the year of the First Circle, 1468, to simple enough parentage. Her father, whose name she cannot remember, worked as a stable hand in Amphale, while her mother, Anira, was a local midwife that had caught the man's eye. She carries very few memories of her father, most of which are tied to the horses he cared for. He would often take her for a ride, which really only entailed her sitting astride the creature as he brushed its coat and trimmed its hooves. But she keeps the memories still. When she was only 5 years of age, fate took a turn, and her father found himself in an argument with a local. It turned violent, and though he was not the aggressor, his opponent's death caused the small family to be shunned from the village. With heavy hearts, they left and headed for the greener pastures of nearby Waterdeep. Moving into the field ward was a harrowing experience for the country folk, but dedicated to building a new life, Natalia's father began working at a local slaughterhouse, while Anira moonlighted at a tannery until the day Natalia took sick. Unlike the richer areas of the city, the field ward has no sanitation services or sewer system. The foul-smelling ward is a dangerous place for those without a strong constitution, and children falling ill to filth fever is not an uncommon tragedy to this day. She wasted away, her parents helpless to do anything for their only child, but when all seemed lost, a mysterious figure approached her family, an arcanist named Fiavara. The stranger offered to pay Anira's husband very handsomely, in exchange for him being a subject for a magical experiment of hers. The pay was enough to get Natalia healed and even move out of the field ward, and though the young couple were suspicious despite Fiavara's gentle face and kind demeanor, you know the old saying, beggars can't be choosers. While Fiavara weaved her mind magic on Natalia's father, urging him to let her magic flow through him, Anira took to the streets to find a healer, and when she returned to her home with a young cleric in tow, her husband was nowhere to be found. He was never seen again. Though she mourned the loss of her husband, Anira knew that her husband would have died for them regardless, and all that was left was to be strong and give their daughter the best life she could, hiding the mental cracks that were already beginning to form. With their newfound wealth, she moved into the castle ward and sought out new employment. She thought that she was in luck when she found employment with the Cassalanter family, a noble house of Waterdeep that was among the richest families within the city. Instead, this was only a road that would draw her and Natalia further into darkness. By 1474, Natalia had seen the shadows that lurked within the gilded homes of nobility, her mother having become fully enveloped into the cult of Asmodeus that the Cassalanters played at being the masters of. Natalia was only 6 years old, but the woman had chosen to indoctrinate her daughter as well, her anointment in the blood of a slain goose being her baptism that dedicated her to Asmodeus and earned her place in the cult's ranks. As Natalia grew, so did the darkness within her. Far from feeling controlled, she took to the ways of Asmodeus like a fish to water. By day, she played with Osvaldo Cassalanter in the halls of the family's manor, and by night she assisted the cult with their dark rituals, the child training to skulk about in the shadows and wield a knife with skill. Her mother lavished praise upon the girl, Anira having fully been enveloped by her worship for Asmodeus, and that encouragement bore fruit. The only thing that meant more to Natalia than the cult was her mother, and it was at her mother's discretion that she killed her first victim, a traitor within the ranks that had tried to breach the cult's secrecy and escape the city. As the blood flowed from the man's neck over her hand, bringing cheers from her mother and the Cassalanters both, she knew she had found her calling. She would be the perfect warrior of the Hells. As Natalia grew into a young woman, her friendship with Osvaldo blossomed, and they began training together, working to master the ways of the warrior beneath the masters that had been approved by the cult. They would often lose themselves in hours of sparring, but they didn't mind being chastised for their exhaustion during the nightly dark rituals. After all, the Cassalanter family was quite influential, so any punishments were feigned at best, as Victoro and Amalia encouraged their son's friendship with the headstrong young faithful, and hoped that the heir apparent had already found the woman who would one day become his wife. When the Lady Cassalanter bore twins in 1483, it was Anira and Natalia that brought them into the world. After a notably difficult labor, it seemed the Cassalanter and Volkov families could not be more intertwined, Victoro welcoming the two into their home and allowing them to stay in the estate for good. When Natalia turned 17, however, the illusion of her peace was shattered. All had seemed well in the cult, but when the time came for a human sacrifice, it was Anira who was chosen. Natalia's mind raced as her mother was prepared, anointed in oils and lain upon the altar, her daughter chosen to be the one to strike with the golden dagger. The conflicted young woman hesitated, as any sane daughter would, her mind already considering taking the blade to the golden masked participants to save her mother's life, but Anira wouldn't have it. Having been fully indoctrinated, she begged her daughter to complete the ritual and send her to their master. Seeing no other option, with tears in her eyes, Natalia struck her down, and Anira became more powerful than Natalia could have ever imagined. Just kidding. She died. The debased celebration after their dark ritual held no joy for Natalia, and as she watched the cult members revel around her mother's still cooling body, she started to wonder how others lived. Wonder if there was a way to escape this cycle of blood that had taken her only remaining family from her. That night, when Osvaldo tried to comfort her, she revealed her desires to be free, and for the first time they were able to be open with each other. He too wished for freedom, and so they plotted together in the darkness to work against the dark. While Osvaldo worked to prepare for their flight, Natalia too sought out her own preparations. Instead of taking her mother's place as the Cassalanters' house servant, she became their enforcer, embracing her rage and wielding it like a burning blade against all who would cross the cult or the Noble family. In secret, she hated them most of all, but she used that hate as her strength, and the more violent she became, the more the Cassalanters relied on her, as the family's banking and money-lending business began to struggle. When the escape preparations were nearly complete, fate once more set their sights on Natalia's loved ones. The Cassalanters were on the verge of bankruptcy, and the Noble family stopped playing at being cultists and steeped themselves further in the ichor of the lower planes, ultimately taking up a bargain with Asmodeus in 1489 to recover their fortune and save their family. A deal was struck that filled Natalia and Osvaldo both with a secret glee. Osvaldo's parents had worded the deal so that the children of the family, including Osvaldo, would receive power, good health, and long life. They would finally have the strength to break free. Devils, however, are not so easily deceived as mortals like to believe. Men are foolish, and powerful men often much more so. At the peak of the signing, Natalia watched in horror as the servant of Asmodeus gave Osvaldo all that had been promised and more. Bladed chains tore free from his chest, and his screams filled the chamber. Some who witnessed the young man's transformation into a Khitan were struck blind or deaf by the horrific sight. Natalia was the only one who watched unflinching as the once noble young man was transfigured into a chain devil before her eyes. Her stoicism in the face of Asmodeus's power commended by her fellow worshippers that did not know she was shedding the last of her tears beneath her gilded mask. With the deal struck and the price paid, the Cassalanter family began a meteoric rise, and Natalia only became more jaded, her blade often being the instrument by which any obstacle was struck down. Honing herself with every enemy slain, she demanded more dangerous missions, until, 2 years to the day from Osvaldo's transformation, Natalia vanished without a trace. She took with her nothing, and burned the small outbuilding that was built for her and her mother to the ground, vanishing into the city with the mass of coins she had secreted away. For a year, Natalia evaded the Cassalanters and their allies as she reveled in the newfound freedom and did all the things that she had always dreamed up in her gilded cage. During such revelry, though, she always knew that there was a cloud hovering over her, but despite that, any attempt she made to get away always led to self-sabotage. Inside, Natalia wants revenge, but knowing she is too weak instead, she isolates, wasting away her money and putting herself into debt until her only option is to use her sword arm. Thankfully, there's a festival starting up soon, and one party is looking for capable fighters. Perhaps this unstable powder keg of a woman will find her calling on the road to Undermountain, or at least some semblance of peace while she travels alongside companions finally worthy of her company. Thank you for watching, and thanks to our wonderful supporters that make up our little community, watching us stream the best available and everything else you see on this channel live to our supporter-only Discord. It's quite active in there, with many playing in these games or others, and even running their own. This channel wouldn't exist without each and every one of you, which is why I read each and every name against my crying editor's wishes, starting with those in the power tier. David, Doodlepoodle, Jay Jones, John the Wicked, Sneaky GI, and William Smith. In the planar tier, Darth Cavalier, Gordy Danke, Ice Dragon, Jesse Labrie, Joshua Williams, and Sparkle Lord the Fabulous. In the Adventurer tier, All's Fiction, Bastion Falconwrath, Dragon Tempest, Jeremy B., John R300, Justin, Katie, Mystics, Ty Korzak, and V. In the Quest Giver tier, Bird or the Cage, Breeze Bender, Chris Householder, Emanon, Kyla, Night Archer, ODST Hero, PPNTT807, Robert Mischief, Rio 1990, Samantha, Sephiroth Kurosame, and Slathar Silcom. And in the Townsfolk tier, Adrian, Blizzard Hawk, Bennett Snyder, Biz Adrian, Brett Bemis, Dylan Taylor, Doodle Poodle, Ice Commander, Enrique, Lone Soul 6, Love Bites Back, Mordant Dragon, Okada, Scott Stedman, Sergeant Humpty, Shugenja, Tom Brazeau, and Wicked Ways. A special thank you to our first ever supporter and longest standing supporter, Scion of Magnus, and Sammy Wolf, and as always, I can't forget to mention our creative team, Doodle Poodle, Nala Fontaine, Shadow Wolf, Scorpius187, MC_Cheshire, Thriving Inferno, and the Forever DM, me. Thank you all for watching to the end, and as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you in the next one. Good night, all.